I tell you what, Clay Helton, for being on the hot seat, is going to have an exciting way to get off of it if USC can put everything together. This is a team that's going to contend in the Pac-12. They made it to the conference championship game last year. Whether you believe in that team or not, this is still a team that made it there, and they have the talent to do it again. It's just a matter, like I said, the chemistry. There's some new faces coming in. Can Keaton Slovis be a playmaker like he was 2 years ago? Is he 100% healthy? There's questions that need to be answered, but today we're talking about the talent on this roster, which there's plenty of it, and there's some new guys coming in that are going to contribute as well. So it's going to be fun to watch this team at once again. And on both sides of the ball, there's guys that you're going to love watching. Number 10, wide receiver Taj Washington. The Memphis transfer had a good year for the Tigers last year, and he's just one of the many wide receivers that USC added this year. And it seems like they added Jake Smith from Texas, tight end Malcolm Epps, and they return a ton of guys. Gary Bryant Jr. is a young guy that could step up as well. There's a lot of guys that can fit in this spot. Taj Washington is a guy that I think is very interesting to see if the Memphis to USC transfer works out for him. Number 9, safety Isaiah Polamau. Honorable mention Pac-12 last year, 40 tackles, 2.5 for loss. It seems like if you're a safety for USC and you got a good name like this, pull him out is going to be fun to watch. I think he takes a step forward this year, and while he's number 9, he could definitely rise up a lot higher. Number 8, defensive end Nick Figueroa. Honorable mention Pac-12 last year, 7 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. This defensive line is going to be a problem this year. There's some guys that we're not going to talk about today that are also going to be a problem, and we haven't talked about the best one yet, but again, this is going to be the best group on the defense, and I think that you're going to have a tough time blocking them, and they're just going to wreak havoc, which is going to be extremely helpful for a USC team that is maybe going to struggle on the other side of the ball in terms of the offensive line. Speaking of that offensive line, though, Jalen McKenzie is a shining star there. It's an honorable mention Pac-12 last year, a guy who's going to protect Keaton Slovis. They need to step up, honestly. They need to do a little bit better than they were last year. It's going to help that they're running the air raid offense. It gets the ball out quicker. It helps. You almost have built-in protection because you get the ball out so quick. Number 6, wide receiver Brew McCoy. Now we get into the big dogs, if you will. Brew McCoy, who at one point, funny enough, was committed to Texas, is on USC. Many are picking him to have a breakout season. I can see that. Amon-Ra St. Brown is gone. Tyler Vaughn's is gone. So that means that there are open positions for the top wide receivers on USC. And given that the offense is a pass-first offense, there's plenty of opportunities for catches. And I think that the thoughts that Brew McCoy is going to have a big year are very true. Number 5, Keonta Ingram. I feel like we're just talking about Texas a lot, man. Jeez. Texas transfer, guy who can do it on the ground, and is a reliable pass catcher, which is good because he's going into an offense that's going to throw the ball a lot, and you need to catch the ball out of the backfield. But there's plenty of competition in the running back room, so it's not just given that he's going to be the starter, but I just like what he brings to the table to this offense. Number 4, cornerback Chris Steele, second team All Pac-12 last year. A guy who is super underrated, doesn't get enough recognition, but that should all change. And the fact that he has to go against a lot of these wide receivers in practice will elevate his game as well. Number 3, wide receiver Drake London, the guy who, honestly, there's not much about Drake London's stature that tells you that he is going to ball on you, but he doesn't care about that. Doesn't matter to him. He's going to do it anyways. And if you watch any of his film, you see why he's such a menace. He's just so smart, and he's just, once the ball is in his hands, he turns into just an animal. 502 yards and 3 touchdowns last year as really the third option, and he and McCoy are set to have big years. and it's going to be scary because London already made plays as a third option, and you don't really expect that. So now people are definitely not going to expect what he's going to do this year. Number 2, defensive end Drake Jackson. Now Todd Orlando is blessed with a second team All Pac-12 selection who brings versatility to this defense. He's not just a pass rusher. They like to. He's so athletic that they'll put him back in coverage. They'll put him on a wide receiver if necessary. There's a lot of things that Drake Jackson can do, and that's flexibility that this staff loves to have. He's going to be a very valuable player at the next level, and he's going to have a big impact on how good this defense can be. And if you can get the guys around him to elevate their play, like I mentioned, this defensive line is going to be insane this year. So if you don't know that already, get familiar with USC's defensive line. They're going to be a problem. And then number 1 is Keaton Slovis. First team All Pac-12 despite not being 100%. He even mentioned that he didn't feel 100% last year, which is crazy because he still made some insane throws. And I'll have to do a film breakdown on him because there's throws that he makes that if he wasn't 100%, I would like to know what those throws looked like if he was 100%. A little under 2,000 yards last year, 17 touchdowns and 7 picks. If he truly was not 100%, which I believe him, I believe that he wasn't, it's going to be crazy to see what he can do at 100%. And with the talent that he has returning around him, you look at Drake London, Keonta Ingram, Brew McCoy, Taj Washington, Malcolm Epps, Jake Smith, Gary Bryant Jr. There's so many guys that can make plays. And this USC offense, honestly, I don't know how they're not one of the best in college football with the talent they have returning. Obviously, injuries play a role, or if people are nicked up like Slovis was last year. But if they're 100% healthy, this is a terrifying team to face. Definitely a team who can still compete for a conference championship. I think they're the favorite in the South. I don't think that there's any reason to believe that they're not. And Clay Helton can get really everyone off their back. A lot of media are picking him as the a hot seat candidate, a guy who's going to get fired if things don't go their way. I mean, I understand the expectations are high, but I don't feel like Clay Helton ever got a fair shot. I think people were trying to get him out of there as soon as he took the job, and they made it to the conference championship game last year. And while it wasn't a full season and blah 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 whatever, they still made it there. And it's interesting to me to see that he is on the hot seat. But with the talent that he has returning, the top 10 that we just put together, there's no reason why they can't make it and win the whole thing. Now, they're going to probably have to face Oregon or Washington, and they're going to have to find a way to win that game. But the fact that they made it last year and they have something to work towards, it's because they didn't play a bowl game. So their final game was the loss to Oregon. So you know that that's on everybody's minds. You know that that's something they're working for, and you know that's something Clay Helton is preaching because he knows what he has on his roster. He knows what he's brought in, and he knows that his team is championship worthy.